Two guys walk into the same dealership wearing the same gray hoodie on the same Tuesday afternoon. One of them gets handed a coffee and led into a private office. The other one gets handed a clipboard and told to wait by the door. Same hoodie, same dealership, same 5 minutes. Nobody said a single word about money out loud, and yet the room had already decided who mattered. The guy left waiting by the door didn't even know what hit him. He just knew something about the air in that room had quietly turned against him. That split-second decision wasn't random. It happens at three very specific numbers, numbers most people never say out loud, numbers that quietly change how bankers, landlords, even your own family start treating you. Today, I'm breaking down all three lines, what actually happens to you at each one, and the part almost nobody puts in a thumbnail, what level 3 secretly does to the people who reach it. Stay until the end, because I'm going to tell you exactly which line was responsible for what happened in that dealership, and it's probably not the one you're picturing right now. Most people assume nothing changes until you're rich. That's wrong. The first shift happens long before anyone would ever call you wealthy, at a number that isn't even 7 figures. $100,000. Not in your checking account. Total. Cash, investments, retirement accounts, anything you actually own minus what you owe. Here's the myth. People picture champagne and a parade. The truth is almost insulting in how quiet it is. Nobody throws you a party at $100,000. What changes is something most people never notice, because it's not happening to your face. It's happening inside a spreadsheet you'll never see. Roughly a quarter of Americans have less than $1,000 saved at any given time, according to the surveys Bankrate runs every year. That's the starting line most people never leave. So crossing $100,000 doesn't make you rich, it makes you statistically rare, and rare changes how risk models treat you. Banks build entire systems around one question: how likely is this person to become a problem? Below the 6-figure line, you're a guess. Above it, you're a pattern they've seen thousands of times before, and patterns get better treatment. A slightly lower rate on the next loan you apply for, a credit limit increase you didn't even ask for, a landlord who stops demanding 3 months of bank statements and just hands you the keys. None of this comes with a phone call. Nobody calls to say, "Congratulations, you've graduated." The system just quietly stops charging you what insiders sometimes call the poor tax, the extra cost of looking financially unstable on paper, even when you're not. Take Daniel. For years, every apartment he applied for wanted a co-signer, a bigger deposit, or proof of 3 times the rent in income he barely cleared. The year his savings account quietly crossed $100,000, none of that changed on the surface. Same job, same paycheck, same apartment search. But the next lease he signed, the leasing office waived the deposit entirely after one look at his bank statement. He never asked why, he just noticed the conversation got shorter. Here's the life hack hiding inside this level. The hardest part of $100,000 isn't the math, it's the boredom. People who study compounding for a living point out that the first real chunk of money is always the slowest, most thankless stretch of the entire process, because compounding hasn't built up enough mass to do any of the heavy lifting for you. At $500 a month and an average market return, that first $100,000 typically takes somewhere around 10 to 11 years. You're doing almost 100% of the work that whole time, which is exactly why most people quit right before it gets easier. And the path there is more forgiving than people assume once you change the monthly number. At $300 a month, you're looking at somewhere around 16 years. Push that to $700 a month, and the timeline drops closer to 9. Get to $1,200 a month, and you can realistically cross the line in under 6 years. The calendar moves fast once the monthly contribution gets serious, which is exactly why the people who get there fastest treat saving less like a feeling and more like a recurring bill they pay themselves first. So if you're nowhere near $100,000 right now, that's not a personal failure. That's just where the climb is hardest for absolutely everyone, including the people who eventually made it. And the way the world treats you at $100,000 is nothing compared to what happens at the next line, because this next one is where actual humans, not algorithms, start changing how they treat you. Cross into 7 figures and something genuinely strange happens. The treatment stops being silent and starts being personal. There are now more than 20 million millionaire households in the United States, and that number keeps climbing every year. So $1 million isn't rare the way it used to sound, but it's exactly large enough to cross an invisible threshold that most major banks build their entire premium service tier around. Once your relationship with a bank crosses a certain size, often somewhere in the low 100,000s, sometimes higher, you typically stop being a 10-digit account number and start being assigned an actual person, a private banker.
someone who knows your name before you say it, someone who can waive a fee with one sentence, someone who calls you instead of the other way around. Picture Maria. Same job for 12 years, same modest house, same Honda in the driveway. The day her retirement accounts and home equity finally add up past $1 million, absolutely nothing about her morning changes. She still makes the same coffee, drives the same car. The cashier at her grocery store has no idea and never will. But 3 weeks later, her bank quietly upgrades her file. The next time she calls about a wire transfer, a real person picks up in 4 rings, instead of leaving her on hold for 40 minutes. A few months after that, her mortgage refinance gets approved at a slightly better rate than the rate quoted to her own brother, with a similar income the same year.
That's the trick of level 2. It's almost entirely invisible from the outside and completely real on the inside. The respect isn't social, it's institutional. There's another perk hiding at this tier that almost nobody talks about out loud. Once your invested assets cross a certain size, banks will often let you borrow against the portfolio instead of selling out of it. A line of credit secured by the investments themselves instead of your paycheck. Sell the stock and you trigger taxes and step out of the market. Borrow against it instead, and the portfolio keeps growing, while the bank hands you cash at a rate far below anything on a credit card. It isn't a loophole, it's printed in the bank's own brochure. You just need enough invested for them to bother offering it. And most of the people who get offered that brochure didn't inherit their way there. Survey after survey on self-made wealth finds the overwhelming majority of American millionaires built it slowly through ordinary jobs and decades of consistent investing rather than a single lucky break, which is part of why this institutional shift rewards patience over luck. Here's the life hack most people miss at this stage. Not all of that $1 million is doing the same job. A house is worth something on paper, but it doesn't generate a single new dollar while you sleep. So separate your number into 2 columns, total net worth, and what you could actually call productive net worth, money that's invested, working, and capable of growing on its own without you adding a cent. A lot of millionaires look rich on one column and still feel financially fragile on the other, because almost everything they own is sitting in a house that pays them nothing back. Quick honesty check, because I promised you facts, not hype. None of this means you've made it. $1 million at a conservative 4% withdrawal rate generates around $40,000 a year. Comfortable, not jets and yachts. The word millionaire still carries the weight it had decades ago in people's heads, but the actual buying power behind it has quietly shrunk. So if level 1 is the system stopping its punishment, level 2 is institutions starting to compete for your attention. But what happens at level 3 is about to flip the entire idea of respect you've been building this whole video, because that's the line where people don't just treat you better, they start being afraid to even test you. Somewhere between $5 and $10 million in investable assets sits a line some people privately call freedom money, and the power of crossing it has almost nothing to do with what you can actually buy. Run the math. $5 million at that same conservative 4% withdrawal rate generates around $200,000 a year without you working a single hour. For most households, that's not retire one day, that's work is now a choice starting today. And here's where this gets genuinely strange. You don't actually have to use that freedom for people to start treating you differently. You just have to have it. Picture a meeting room. Your boss says something unreasonable, the kind of thing that would normally make anyone swallow hard and nod along. Except now you're sitting there thinking calmly, I do not actually need this job. You don't say it out loud. You don't have to. People in that room can sense the shift in how you're sitting, how slowly you're answering, how little your voice is shaking. Nothing turns a room towards someone faster than the quiet confidence of a person who genuinely needs nothing from it. The same shift shows up outside the office. A salesperson who was pushing hard a minute ago suddenly backs off the pressure tactics. A negotiation that should have taken 3 rounds gets settled in 1 because the other side can tell you're not desperate enough to flinch.
Only a small sliver of American households, by most estimates under 2%, ever cross into this range. So statistically, almost everyone respecting you at this level is respecting something they will personally never touch. The private wealth arms of the largest banks build entire businesses around this exact range. Crossing into 8 figures of investable assets is often the unofficial entry point for the most exclusive private banking. Dedicated investment teams, invitation-only events, minimums most people will never see quoted anywhere public. None of it is advertised to you. It's advertised to people who already qualify. The same shift plays out somewhere far less glamorous than a private bank, like a school fundraising committee or a neighborhood association meeting. Nobody announces anyone's net worth out loud, but somehow the person who quietly wrote the biggest check last year gets asked their opinion first, gets the benefit of the doubt in every disagreement, gets thanked by name from the podium. Nobody planned it that way. It just happens, the same way water finds the lowest point in a room. And this is exactly where I have to be honest with you, because the part nobody puts in the thumbnail is that level 3 comes with a cost. The cost is this. At this level, people stop reacting to you and start reacting to the number attached to you, and that includes people who have known you your entire life. There's an actual clinical name for what happens to people who land serious money quickly. It's called sudden wealth syndrome, guilt, paranoia, a strange kind of decision paralysis, and an avalanche of relatives and old acquaintances who suddenly remember your birthday the same year your net worth changed. Researchers who studied lottery winners found something almost cruel. A sudden windfall didn't actually protect most winners from eventually going broke. It just delayed the same outcome that was already coming, sometimes only for a couple of years. And then there's the quieter damage. The friends who start pulling away the moment you visibly start winning, not out of malice, just instinct. Psychologists sometimes call it crab bucket behavior. Put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, and the second one tries to climb out, the others drag it back down. People do the exact same thing to each other, usually without even realizing it.
And here's the part that should bother you a little. None of this actually requires the number to be real. Plenty of people get a small taste of level 2 or level 3 treatment just by driving the right car or wearing the right watch into a room, because most humans are pattern matching off visible signals, not verified bank statements. The respect was never really about confirmed wealth. It was about whatever convinced the room you might have it. So here's the twist sitting underneath everything you just watched. That dealership employee from the very beginning, he wasn't reacting to either of those two men. He was reacting to a number neither of them said out loud, a soft credit check pulled up on a tablet under the counter, completely invisible to both of them. He was never respecting a person. He was respecting a risk score. That's the secret hiding inside all 3 of these levels. None of the respect was ever really about you. It was about what your number represented to whoever was looking at it. Risk, opportunity, leverage, or a threat to their own standing. The strangers, the bankers, even the family members who get colder or warmer depending on your bank balance, they were never reacting to who you are. They never were. Which means the only version of respect that was ever actually yours to control is the one you give yourself, at $0, at $100,000, and at every line after that. The version of you who automated that first $50 transfer when it felt pointless deserves more respect than any number on a screen will ever earn you from a stranger. None of the 3 lines we just walked through can be skipped, rushed, or faked your way past for very long. The system has gotten uncomfortably good at telling the difference between a real number and a borrowed one. Once you see that, chasing the reaction stops making sense. Chasing the number on its own terms is the only version of this game actually worth playing. So here's my question for you, and I actually want an honest answer in the comments. Out of the 3 lines we just walked through, $100,000, $1 million, or $5 to $10 million, which one do you think would change how people treat you the most? Not which one you want, which one you think would actually move the needle.
If this gave you a clearer way to see where you actually stand, do yourself a favor and subscribe, because next, I'm breaking down exactly how fast someone starting from zero can realistically reach that first line.